The first thing I noticed when I walked into the wedding hall was the silence. Not the polite, buzzing quiet of people waiting for a ceremony to start, but the heavy, suffocating kind that clung to the air like smoke. And then I saw him. He was supposed to be just a stranger to me, a face I had buried in the archives of painful memories, but there he stood, wearing a tailored black suit that looked like it was made for his arrogance. His amber eyes found mine across the marble floor, and for a second, I thought I might collapse. I should have turned around, run back to the taxi that dropped me off, and sworn off my family's insane idea of happiness. But no, I didn't, because deep down, a part of Maya foolish, Omega part still remembered him. Connor. My voice cracked, barely above a whisper, as if saying his name aloud might undo everything. Ethan. He smiled, a half-smile that had once made my heart soar and then shatter. And God, it still had the same effect. It was an arranged marriage. A union brokered between the Stanhopes and the Kincaid family, two powerful dynasties in New York. Money, influence, politics, nothing to do with love. And yet, when my parents told me I was to marry an alpha from the Kincaid line, I had pictured someone handsome, strong, dependable. Not him, the man who had once been my everything and then abandoned me without a word. My stomach turned as he approached, and every instinct in me screamed to flee. But the ceremony had already begun. Guests had taken their seats, and my family's eyes bore into me like daggers. There was no escape. Relax, Omega. His voice, low and warm, slid into my chest like a blade wrapped in silk. It's just a wedding. Just a wedding, I repeated to myself, trying to summon some courage. Right? The problem was, I couldn't summon courage. Not with him here, standing so close that I could smell the faint scent of cedarwood and something uniquely him, something I had memorized over 2 long, miserable years after he left. My body reacted before my mind did, and I hated it. The ceremony proceeded, officiated by a distant cousin who seemed almost nervous about the tension in the air. Vows were recited, rings were exchanged, and I tried, desperately, to focus on the speech my parents had given me about duty and legacy. But my eyes kept darting to Connor. His hand brushed mine for a fleeting second when I took the ring, and I nearly burned alive from the contact. It was impossible not to remember how he had held me after a long, brutal day, how his laugh had once felt like sunlight breaking through a storm, and then how abruptly it ended. The betrayal had been devastating. An alpha supposed to be my protector, my partner, choosing power and freedom over me. And now, here he was, part of my life again, tied to me legally, irreversibly. After the ceremony, the reception began. Crystal chandeliers glittered above, the piano played a soft, melancholic tune, and the guests began to mingle, unaware of the storm brewing between 2 young men in their early 20s. Connor didn't leave my side. He hovered near the edge of polite conversation, catching my gaze every few moments with that irritating, knowing smirk. It was infuriating, and I hated that I wanted to melt under it. Do you remember the night before you left? His voice came from behind me, soft, as if he had been reading my thoughts. I stiffened. I don't see why that matters. It matters because you're staring at me like I killed someone, he said, his tone teasing, but the faint tremor betrayed him. He was nervous, just like I was. I wanted to punch him, to shake him, to scream all the things I had locked away for years. But I didn't, because as much as I hated him, as much as my heart ached from the past, there was an undeniable pull. Later, during the dinner, Connor and I were seated side by side, a cruel trick of fate. Our elbows brushed, sending shivers down my spine. I kept my fork trembling, trying to look calm, but he noticed. He always noticed. Ethan, he murmured under his breath, leaning just close enough that our breaths mingled. You've grown. Stronger. I laughed dryly, bitterness mixing with something dangerous in my chest. Stronger enough to stay sane while marrying the man who broke your heart? His amber eyes softened, and for a moment, the mask of arrogance slipped. I never stopped thinking about you. I wanted to hate him. I really did. But the confession ignited something I hadn't felt in years, a spark, a memory, a foolish hope that maybe things could be different. The night dragged on, endless toasts, polite laughter, the clinking of glasses masking the tension that throbbed between us. Finally, the guests retired to the garden for fireworks, leaving Connor and me alone in the dimly lit hall. "You know," he said, voice low, almost reverent, "I didn't come back because I wanted a reunion. I came back because I couldn't stop thinking about what I lost." My chest tightened. "You think a wedding can fix what you broke?" "Not fix," he corrected gently, tilting his head, his hair catching the soft glow of the chandeliers. "Heal. Maybe not completely, but maybe enough for us to try again." The words, whispered and sincere, cut through my defenses like a knife dipped in honey. My lips trembled, my heart raced, and I realized I was crying tears I had held back for years, tears of anger, longing, and the unbearable beauty of seeing him care again. Before I could respond, he reached out, his hand brushing mine again, firmer this time. The touch wasn't casual. It was a promise, a challenge, a temptation. I wanted to pull away, to remind him of the betrayal, but my omega instincts betrayed me. I leaned into the warmth, into the comfort of his hand. The first dance started, and we were swept into the crowd, the music wrapping around us like a cocoon. And in that fleeting moment, the world outside the hall, the business deals, the family expectations, the anger, the heartbreak all disappeared. It was just him and me, tangled in a dance that felt like fate itself. "You're still stubborn," he whispered, his forehead resting against mine. "And you're still impossible." I shot back, managing a shaky laugh, the tension between us palpable. He smiled, the kind of smile that made my knees weak, the kind that had once made me fall in love without realizing it. "I guess some things don't change," he murmured. And maybe, just maybe, I was ready to believe him again. The night outside the grand hall was alive with fireworks, the sky exploding in colors that mirrored the chaos inside my chest. Connor and I had escaped the crowd, slipping through the French doors into the private garden, where the scent of blooming roses and freshly cut grass mingled with the crisp New York air. He stood a few feet away, hands shoved into the pockets of his suit, his expression unreadable. My heart thudded so loudly I was sure he could hear it. "Ethan," he said finally, his voice low and hesitant, "I know I don't deserve this second chance, but I can't help wanting it." I wanted to scream at him, remind him of the nights I cried alone, the letters I never sent, the way I had traced his absence in my mind until it was a physical ache. But looking at him now, with that mix of guilt and longing in his amber eyes, my anger faltered. "Connor," I whispered, taking a tentative step closer. "You left me. Do you understand what that did to me?" He flinched, and I saw the pain flash across his face. I know I hurt you more than I can say, and I don't expect forgiveness, only that you listen to me now." I did. I had to. There was something in the way he looked at me, something that pierced through every protective layer I had built around my heart. "I never stopped thinking about you either," he continued, taking a cautious step toward me. "Every decision I made, every path I took, I kept imagining a life where I could come back to you. I felt my knees weaken. You had a chance to come back sooner." His shoulders slumped, the weight of regret heavy on them. "I was too proud. I was too scared. And I see now that pride isn't worth anything if it costs me you." The words were raw, unpolished, and devastatingly sincere. My breath hitched as he closed the distance between us. Our hands met, fingers entwining in a gesture that spoke louder than any vow could. The warmth of him was intoxicating, the familiar brush of his thumb across my knuckles sending shivers down my spine. "I don't know if I can trust you again," I admitted, my voice trembling. "Not fully. I don't expect you to," he replied softly, thumb stroking the back of my hand. "But I'll spend the rest of my life proving I'm worth it. If you let me." A small, incredulous laugh escaped me, despite the tears welling in my eyes. "You're ridiculous. And yet here I am." He grinned, that maddening smile that had once made me fall hopelessly in love. Ridiculous, stubborn, And completely yours if you'll have me. I swallowed hard, the tension between desire and caution tearing me in two. But when he leaned closer, pressing his forehead gently against mine, the world seemed to tilt. For the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. I want to believe you, I whispered, my omega instincts betraying my resolve as a blush crept across my cheeks. That's all I need, he said, and then his lips brushed mine in a tentative kiss, soft and searching. My heart raced, my body leaning into the warmth and familiarity I had longed for. It was gentle at first, almost apologetic, then gradually bolder as the years of separation melted away. We broke apart only to look at each other, breathless, hearts hammering in sync. There was no rush, no urgency, just the quiet acknowledgement that we had been given a second chance. Do you still remember the night by the lake? He asked suddenly, a hint of humor in his voice despite the gravity of our reunion. I couldn't help but smile through my tears. How could I forget? You promised me the stars and then vanished. I was young and foolish, he admitted, and terrified of losing you to the world. But now I know I don't want to live a life without you in it. His hands cupped my face, thumbs brushing away the stray tears I hadn't even realized were falling. I leaned into him, closing my eyes, letting myself be vulnerable for the first time in years. The fireworks exploded overhead, brilliant colors illuminating the garden and painting our faces in light and shadow. Connor kissed me again, deeper this time, a declaration and a promise all at once. And as I responded, letting myself melt into him, I realized that despite the betrayal, despite the pain, our love was still alive. After what felt like hours, we finally pulled back, foreheads resting together, breathing synchronized. We'll have to face our families, I murmured, voice heavy with the weight of reality. He chuckled softly. Let them deal with the legacy and the politics. Right now, it's just us. I laughed, a sound that felt foreign and liberating. Just us, I repeated. The days that followed were a delicate dance of negotiation, compromise, and cautious steps toward reconciliation. Our families, initially skeptical and protective, gradually began to see the sincerity in our actions. Each private moment between us was a revelation: stolen kisses in quiet corners, whispered conversations late at night, and the slow rebuilding of trust that had been shattered so long ago. Connor proved himself daily, not with grand gestures, but with small, consistent acts of care. A hand on my back when I was nervous, a warm smile during tense family dinners, a gentle voice reminding me that I was safe. It was maddening how easily I fell back under his influence, but it was also comforting, grounding me in the love I had once lost and now found again. We began to explore the softer sides of our relationship, the playful banter, the private jokes, the late-night drives through the city streets where we would talk about everything and nothing. His presence was intoxicating, a mix of strength and tenderness that made me feel both protected and cherished. One night, as we sat on the rooftop of our apartment building overlooking the city skyline, Connor turned to me with a serious expression. Ethan, I know the past hurt us, but I want to build something lasting, something ours. I leaned against him, letting the cool night air mingle with the warmth of his body. I want that too, I admitted, but it won't be easy. Nothing worth having ever is, he replied, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. We'll face it together. The weeks turned into months, and slowly, the pain of betrayal became a distant memory, replaced by the trust and intimacy we nurtured carefully, deliberately. We learned each other's rhythms again, the way I curled into his chest when I was anxious, the way he softened in my presence, how our vulnerabilities became our strengths when shared. Our love grew deeper, more resilient, tempered by hardship and strengthened by choice. Every touch, every glance, every word carried the weight of the journey we had endured, and yet it was lightened by the joy of rediscovery. Finally, a year after our tumultuous wedding, we stood together in the same hall where our nightmare had begun. But this time, it wasn't a union forced by legacy or duty. It was a celebration of what we had survived, of the love we had chosen freely. Friends and family gathered around, not as spectators of an arrangement, but as witnesses to a bond forged in fire and patience. Connor squeezed my hand, and I looked into his amber eyes, seeing not the boy who had betrayed me, but the man who had returned, determined to love me fully, without hesitation. "Are you ready?" he asked softly, his forehead resting against mine. I nodded, heart full. "I've been ready for a long time." As the officiant spoke, I felt the weight of the past lift, replaced by the promise of the future. When Connor and I exchanged vows, it was not for duty, not for family, but for us, for the love that had endured betrayal, separation, and doubt, only to emerge stronger. Our kiss at the end was no longer tentative or filled with pain. It was a kiss of triumph, of healing, of two souls reunited and unbroken. The applause of our loved ones was distant background noise compared to the pounding of my heart, synced with his, beating for a shared life. Later, alone in the quiet of our new home, Connor held me close, whispering, "I'll never leave you again." "I believe you," I replied, burying my face in his chest, inhaling the familiar, comforting scent that had haunted me for years. And for the first time, I allowed myself to feel completely, without fear or reservation. The past was a shadow behind us, and ahead lay a life of laughter, tenderness, and the unbreakable bond of two young men who had found each other against all odds. In that moment, I realized that love, no matter how complicated or painful, was always worth fighting for. And with Connor by my side, I knew we would face whatever came next together, unafraid, unbroken, and utterly in love. As dawn broke over the city, painting the skyline in hues of gold and pink, I rested my head against Connor's shoulder, the warmth of his body a promise of forever. For the first time in my life, I was truly home. And this time, nothing, not betrayal, not fear, not time itself could take him away from me. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.